Welcome back, everybody. This is AEG's podcast. I'm Catherine Brownlee. Today we have a very special guest with us, Steve Webb with the Global Institute of Food Security. I know this is a hot topic for everyone around the globe, but I know our members and member partners are very interested as well. So looking forward to the conversation. And Steve, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Catherine. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Well, mine as well. I'm very curious about the Global Institute for Food Security. What is it exactly?
The Global Institute for Food Security is a unique industry government academic partnership founded by Nutrien, the government of Saskatchewan, and the University of Saskatchewan more than 10 years ago now. Again, what I like about the Institute and why it was created is it represents all three of the sectors that need to partner, collaborate, and work together to spark inventions and build innovations that have market impact. And again, we're here to help promote the discovery, development, and delivery of innovative solutions for globally sustainable food, starting right here in Western Canada and rippling out around the world.
Well, I'm so proud to hear that. I love it. I mean, obviously, I'm a proud Albertan. I was born here. So proud with what the work that we do out of Western Canada and how it affects the globe. And thank you for letting us know that and setting the stage. What kind of organizations are working with or are looking to partner with the Global Institute for Food Security?
So we look to partner with governments, academia, and industry, both here in Canada. And again, right from coast to coast, that we have partnerships and relationships from British Columbia all the way to, we don't have anything in Nova Scotia yet, but through Quebec. Lots of work here in the Western Prairie region, not just here in Saskatchewan, but Alberta, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan, and partnerships and collaborations internationally. And again, one of the things for the Global Institute for Food Security is our mission is to work with partners to discover, develop, and deliver innovative solutions for globally sustainable food. And you can't just discover new products in an academic or government setting. You need those partnerships with industry to make sure, A, it's market relevant, but also the ability to scale it up and bring it to consumers and producers where this technology can have the most effective impact on the problems that we are all trying to solve.
Oh, I love it. Well done. That's awesome, Steve. Thank you. What do you think are some of the biggest opportunities for innovation in agriculture and food?
I think some of the biggest opportunities for innovation are, one, recognizing that the business vertical we're in is unique and different than other businesses versus like compared to tech and pharmaceuticals. So we need new approaches to create that innovation ecosystem. Here in Canada, in robust terms, we spend a lot of money on research. We're about number 8 in the world in terms of our investment into research, but only number 23rd in recognizing output from that. And when you think about it as a business, and we should be thinking about it as a business, I'm not seeing the return on investment. And there's a bunch of things that contribute to that. And some of the unique challenges for us in agriculture are, one, there's really no pre-competitive space in agriculture like there is in pharmaceutical and tech. The timelines are longer because, again, if you're going into the field, especially now, I'm looking out my window and there's still snow on the ground in Saskatoon. You can't accelerate 2 years of field studies. The regulatory environment is much more complex than it is even in pharmaceuticals because, again, the different agencies that we're dealing with, from human health, the plant and farm health through CFIA, for example, in Canada, as well as the need to make sure that we have a regulatory ecosystem that it will accept, especially products from Canada, because we export food to the rest of the world to help feed the rest of the world. Scale up is a challenge for us, and it needs to all be looked at really early stage when we're looking at that beginning of the innovation ecosystem. Things that excite me about the opportunity space, when we look at Canadian agriculture, Western Canadian agriculture, I was on a call yesterday with Bill Grewal from CEO of Protein Industries Canada, and Bill referred to 1988 and the impact that the environment, that the weather that year had on production in Western Canada, the drought. I I wasn't even in the West in 1988. I wasn't even out of. I was in university in 1988. I didn't even have a job in 1988, but I know that year from the significance and impact it had on farmers and producers. And when you look at the drought of 88 and the impact that we had here in 2021, where we had a major drought, but we still got a lot of crop off because we changed how we farmed. Farmers are innovative here in Western Canada. The adoption of no-till, the adoption of herbicide-tolerant canola, the adoption of the beginning to be more and more present, the adoption of variable rate fertilizer applications, different ways to apply fertilizer, fall versus spring, banding versus broadcast. We're seeing a massive change in the resiliency in the agricultural system. And I think that innovation opportunity to continue to drive that sustainability that's both economically sustainable, and that's key, environmentally sustainable, and enable social sustainability, because we can't have a secure world if we've got people hungry in it.
Yeah, that is right. I agree. I have a passion around that as well. From our homeless friends to the bottom has dropped out of the middle class since the lockdown. It's really disheartening, and it's not getting better.
No, and again, the tools that have got us here have been great to change how we've done things, but to get us that next stage, we need new inventions and new innovations. And again, I think spaces, I tend to be a glass half full person where we see challenge, like as you mentioned, how are we going to feed? We need new ways to feed, like the challenges of the climate change on water availability, where we're getting 95% of our leafy green vegetables in winter. What can we do to innovate, and how do we think about food production differently here in Canada? Again, ideas of more local production and being able to do it in a controlled environment manner, I think offer lots of opportunities for innovation. I think the opportunity around selling Canada's, particularly Western Canada's, sustainability messages. We are one of the most intensive producers of food in the world with the lowest carbon footprint in the world. Saskatchewan leads the way, Western Canada leads the way, because our farmers are innovative and adopt these new technologies and deploy them at scale.
Well, that brings me to my next question around innovation, and how has innovation delivered sustainable outcomes for agriculture producers in Alberta and Western Canada?
I think for us in Alberta, Western Canada in particular, it is, I heard it described as the 26-year experiment or 30-year experiment around the adoption of no-till. The innovation that the large companies, well, I guess it's BASF now, but it started with Agrivo, to BASF, companies like Monsanto, the herbicide-tolerant canolas, and the equipment manufacturers that started here in Western Canada to enable that technology, where we've seen the transformation of the landscape in Western Canada from being a source of greenhouse gas emissions to actually being a sink for carbon. So farmers in Saskatchewan and Western Canada, Alberta and Manitoba, they secure more carbon than they actually use to produce the crop on the farm. They're not carbon neutral in the food system because we still have to ship and move our product around. But comparing Canada, Western Canada, Saskatchewan to the rest of the world, we're almost 200% less of a footprint than what Germany and France have, for example.
Wow.
And again, it's because of these technologies that our farmers have had the opportunity to, that innovation, that market impacting innovation and adoption by our farmers. It's transformative. We have the lowest footprint compared to Australia for wheat, non-durum wheat, because I got to make sure I make that canola and peas when you look at countries like Australia, the United States, France, and Germany, for example. So, and again, it's roughly that order in which our nearest competitor is. And we are the only geography of those countries that we have studied that is a net carbon sink in how we manage our land. And again, I think a real advantage for us in Western Canada, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba is also how we have the opportunity for grasslands and beef production. Because again, these perennial forage areas are really, really important for converting the energy of the sun, using it to sequester carbon and convert that energy into protein. Is so important in the ecosystem, and it's an integrated approach to how we should be thinking about regenerative agriculture.
I love it. Wow, I didn't know those numbers. So well done. That's great. Thank you. Another good news story for Western Canada.
It is a great news story for Western Canada, and I think it's a great news story for the world because when we think about food security, people have to eat. So why not but leverage the power, the food power we have here in Western Canada to help feed a growing world sustainably.
I agree. I love it. Thank you so much. Also curious about commercial scale vertical farming and how it might contribute to food security. We have a couple of them that are members of AEG, so just curious.
I think this is the commercial scale vertical farming, I think, is really exciting. So where I worked before, we put a vertical farm in because we didn't have enough land on our site to put another greenhouse in. So the opportunity to say, hey, we can go up and down, so with 10 floors basically, to allow our research program to expand and produce higher quality, more uniform plants for what we were interested in as Corteva. The thing that I think is exciting about vertical farming is the ability to be able to produce food in the region where it's being consumed. You see countries like Singapore with their 30 by 30 strategy, so 30% of the calories produced locally by 2030. Essentially Singapore is a big city, and they've been able to move down that path, and vertical farming and controlled environment is a key element to that. I think given the challenges with water availability in certain parts of our food system where we source, in the winter leafy green vegetables, vertical farming makes a lot of sense. I think there's opportunity to continue to drive the economics of it, both at the physical infrastructure level, the energy use, water use, automation, again, to get around challenges that the entire agricultural and food system faces with labor availability. But also, I think, even on the biology side, in that we've tended to breed plants, fruits, vegetables that go into vertical farming have originally been bred and developed for field use. We make compromises in terms of the abiotic stress, so heat, drought tolerance to biotic stresses like disease and insects, so that they grow and perform well in a field environment. In a controlled environment standpoint, do we really need those traits in the genetics that are in the controlled environment? Because the operations can manage the water, the fertilizer. They're controlled so they don't have to use as many pesticides because pest pressure is lower. And should we be thinking about purposely breeding varieties that are kind of like the Ferrari of the plant, because I can let it run as fast as it wants in terms of production and production quality without having to worry about managing the risk, because I can control it in the environment that I'm in. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to drive the economics of vertical farming. I think it's an empowering way for local communities. And again, one of the things that I think is really good is it tastes good because it's fresh.
Yeah.
And that's rather maybe an unscientific thing to say, but darn it, if it tastes good and it's right there,
Yes.
it's a great story to say.
It is. I have a question. Can I go a little deeper on that?
Sure.
With the vertical farming, what I understand is that the biggest problem or the biggest issue or opportunity is around power and the charge around it. If you were speaking to the three premiers of our provinces today, what would you say to them about how do we get around this challenge with power and to ensure that we have that 30 by 30 challenge for all the provinces? How do we rectify this?
I mean, that question of power is a really good question, because one of the things that, again, when we look at the deployment of vertical farms in other parts of the world, for example, in the United Arab Emirates, in Saudi Arabia, they are they're using they're basically using renewable energy to drive the energy operation in there. And I think it's one of the things that here in Canada, we need to find ways to not be uncompetitive in an international market for our ability to compete in a sustainable manner. So if, again, I we've had through the Global Institute for Food Security, we do have relationships and networks globally, and it's interesting to see the innovations that are being deployed and developed in like the UAE and Saudi Arabia. And I'm wondering how much of that innovation can we think about bringing back here to Canada to, again, improve the economics and operations. And again, we need to be thinking about ways that we deliver on the resiliency and robustness and the nutrition of our food systems.
Yeah, I agree. That's awesome. Thanks so much, Steve. I love you've got the global approach on this. It's awesome. Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
what are some of the other bigger challenges in delivering innovation in the agriculture and food business vertical?
Well, besides the unique structural challenges, I think one of the biggest challenges we face is an enabling regulatory environment.
Right.
Um, from a regulation perspective, it's not that I think, first of all, regulation is really important. It builds trust.
Yeah.
And again, Canada has a reputation for some of the most safe and highest quality food.
Sure.
So that regulation is good, but it needs to be science-based. It needs to be predictable. It needs to be transparent for everyone in the ecosystem. We cannot afford to let politics influence how we look at our regulatory framework. And again, I think we need to be leading the world in terms of innovation because of the reputation we have here in Canada. This is one where I think Canada has an opportunity to show leadership. And this is at both the federal, provincial, and at the local level, because there's issues with getting permits to build vertical farms and other kinds of operations that are needed to be able to drive this innovation system at all three levels of government. And I think we just need to have a very coordinated, transparent, and science-based approach to regulation that is not focused on slowing down innovation, but doing it in a way that is much more collaborative and interactive. We've shown that we can bring new technologies and innovations to the market in rapid time without compromising safety or efficacy. And I think we need to find a way to continue to do that to drive the innovation, because we need it. The world has got 8 billion people in it. We're struggling with making sure that we, even here in Canada, that's a net food exporter, to meet the needs of the Canadian people from coast to coast, from south to north. And again, thinking about how do we create an environment that enables us to capitalize on our most important resource, which is our people and our intellect, to get them into tools and technologies our farmers and producers can use.
I love it. That's awesome, Steve. Great advice. Thank you. And I hear your optimism. I love the glass half full. I do. Why should the rest of us feel optimistic about agriculture and food in Western Canada?
I think for me, there's a line, and I'm stealing this from the Deputy Minister of Agriculture in Saskatchewan, Rick Burton. Rick's line was, "The world needs more Saskatchewan." I think that's true.
Me
but
too.
I think we need to be thinking about it as the world needs more of Canada, particularly what we can do in Western Canada when we think about that story about sustainable food production. We're faced, we do have an issue on climate. And we need to be thinking about this not in terms of I'm shutting things down, but I need to ramp things up, but doing it in a way that's economically, environmentally, and socially sustainable. And there's this misconception that environment and economics are or.
Yeah.
And that is not true.
Agreed.
They are and gated. And again, we've seen it in particular in how we farm in Western Canada with the no-till, herbicide-tolerant canola. And we're good at it. Yeah, we can do more, and that's the opportunity of innovation, and it represents economic opportunity and environmental opportunity for the country, for us in Western Canada and people around the world. It's a great story.
Agreed. I agree. I'm going to close in one final question, and I love the work that you and your team are doing. What can we do to support you?
Well, first of all, the opportunity to appear in front of on the podcast with you is a great opportunity. So thank you, Catherine, for that. The other thing is feel free to reach out to us at the Global Institute for Food Security through partner with us at gifts.ca, and we'd be happy to interact, answer questions. We're on the look for people that we can help. Love to tell the story about the Global Institute for Food Security and our capabilities, our capacity, and the most important asset at the Global Institute for Food Security is our people, which represent the competency of our organization to help companies and organizations advance their innovations to the marketplace. So thanks, Catherine, for the opportunity to put an ad in for us at GIFTS.
It's absolute my pleasure and our pleasure at AEG. Thank you again, Steve. Thank you for all the good work that you and your team are doing. I'm extremely grateful, and I know the rest of us are too. So thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Everyone, that was Steve. Please reach out to the Global Institute of Food Security. Get behind them, support them in every way you can, and make introductions wherever possible. Thanks again for joining us on AEG's podcast.